How hard can it be to go abroad, to make a life abroad, to move your kids, your spouse, your pets, maybe even all half of your household, move it across the Atlantic and just set up shop abroad? It's not that hard, right? Thousands of people have done it before. We live in 2021. We've almost gone through a pandemic. We've seen worse, right? Arguably, being an expatriate or becoming an expat, one that comes from Central Europe to North America, today, that shouldn't be such a big deal anymore. We got this, don't we? Or do we? Being an expat isn't as easy as you might think. There's a whole conference around it to solve your problems, to answer your questions of what it might be like to make a life abroad. And today, we'll talk about it. Stay tuned. Good day to you, my dear friend.
Oh, how are you, my friend? You know, I've missed that music. I don't know. There is something about that music that gets me going in the morning, and it is the morning, so, you know, technically, it's a good time to play it. How are you? What's going on?
Scarn on, mate.
Scarn on.
Everything's going on great, and I'm getting excited about this conference that I just mentioned, because I once thought of myself as an expatriate. Maybe, I don't know, maybe another definition would apply by now. I think you at some point considered yourself an expat, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of don't know whether I'm still am after 21 years, but we'll see.
So what is an expat? I've been banding around that term as if it were common knowledge. Maybe not everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because there are some people that literally we work with that are moving countries, and the term expatriate has never really come up in the lexicon. So it has been, yeah. So basically, yeah, expat, out of the fatherland, basically, right, the paternal part of it. You know, everything's got to be male in this world, you know. But
is there a female version of exmatriate?
Exmat, out of the motherland. I actually like motherland better. But anyway, that's what we're talking about today, which is really close to our heart, because we work with so many people that do this, and we're always looking for experts in the field that provide as much information as they possibly can to support the well-being of the globally mobile in this fantastic world. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of them already watching, so let's honor the folks who are on here. Janet, hello. Janet also works in the field of making the life of expats easier. And there is, well, I'm hoping I'm saying her name right, Kerstin Sommer-Raza. That the first part of her name could be German or Central European. The last part could be Arabic. I am not sure. However, Indiana, hello.
That's central of somewhere.
Yes. And you mentioned an expat. Wow, now we're twisting our tongues. Yes. Ready to bring her on?
Absolutely. Let's get it.
Well, we have somebody here with us today who has actually put together a conference to help us weird people who live outside our mother and fatherlands to make our lives a little easier. Welcome to the show, Gabi Hegan, live from New York City.
Hello. I didn't prepare my opening monologue now, so next
Welcome,
time.
Gabi. Thanks for being
here. My comedy still done.
So Gabi, like myself, is originally from a little dot on the map in Central Europe. We're both German, and hence might recognize a similarity in our accents. So Gabi, tell the folks on here where in fact are you from?
We not only share the German connection. We're both Bavarian, so that's another thing. I'm from Munich, right in the center of Bavaria, and I've been here also actually last week 22 years. I got you by a few months, Brett, I guess.
Oh yes, a few months.
22 years in October. It was 22 years, and I didn't come as a classic expat. I came for love. I followed a boy that I met, in Peru on vacation. So slightly different story, but I also do struggle with the terminology, because we're still expatriates because we live outside of our fatherland, whatever you want to call it. But in German, I always say like we're a little bit more like the 𝙏𝙬𝙤𝙾𝙬𝙪, the ones that kind of got stuck, because many people that are here long term, they didn't necessarily plan on coming. I know so many people that came for like a 3 or 5 year assignment, or they came as a student, as an au pair, fell in love. So I never planned to be here 22 years. So I'm an expat in the one sense, yes. But on the other hand, I think in the comment, especially in the German community where I'm mostly working in, it's usually referred to, I think, to the 1 to 5 year kind of stint that people consider themselves an expats, and everyone else. We had a lot of discussion in the team. Are we an immigrant? Yes, but all immigrant has a little bit different connotations in the US, I think. So we have to come up with a term, Christian. That's our mission. We have to come up with a term that applies to us long-term stuck us.
How about we're global people?
Global people, perfect.
That's a term I can work with. I don't know how you feel about that. So, German community in New York, this is how all of this got started. So tell us a little bit about the background. I've known you I've watched what you've been doing for years. I know you've done a thing called Citykinder, and I think you're still doing that. And that from there came Heimat Abroad. Well, what is all this, and how does the Germanness in New York inspire you to take it up a notch a little bit?
Yeah, well, I started 2011 when my daughter was about 2 years old, and I realized I wanted to connect more with the German community. The first 10 years here, I was like, yoo-hoo, international. I loved everything and every culture and everything I could experience. But once I had my child, I was like, I'm missing the Center Party and the German Easter egg hunt and like lots of culture and festivities, and I wanted my child also to be able to speak German with other kids. So I founded a website called Citykinder, which was originally more like a mom hobby, I would say, for German-speaking parents in New York. And along the way, I met some amazing people that were like, "Hey, you can make this bigger. Let's make this a business. Let's grow this." And in 2017, we launched Heimat Abroad, which is a website for German-speaking community, anyone really, from student to senior executive in the US, where we share information mainly on things that you need to know when you plan, when you're already here, or even when you move back. And at around the same time, I had a meeting with Elena Fuchs from the Chamber of Commerce here in New York, who is still there, and he's still very involved. And we started what's called the Ich Bin Expat Fair. It was like a one-day big community event trade show with German schools and anything, lawyers, relocation professionals, restaurants, like everything that had something to do in German community in New York came and was really successful for 3 years. And then a little thing called COVID-19 happened in 2020. That was obviously not happening.
So you had that too in New York? Okay. Just
3 years we did that. Yeah, we had that too. Yeah,
okay, good. I thought it was a local thing. Okay.
Crazy a little bit.
So let's clarify for those who are not fluent in German. So most Americans probably are familiar with the term Kinder. It's not kinder, but the German word Kinder, which is plural for Kind, which means Kinder means children. That's a term that has encroached on the English language a little bit. But the term Heimat, that's something linguists might say that's difficult to translate into English. How would you define the term Heimat?
Yeah, it's one of those words that you cannot translate. There's no direct translation. It's home, but it's more than that. It's home in the sense of where you're from. which has a lot of cultural inflections as well. Like my home now is New York, but for 22 years, but my Heimat is still Munich, Bavaria, because then that, it's kind of thing, you can get the girl out of Bavaria, but you can't get Bavarian out of the girl kind of thing, that applies to, I think, many locations, but we have a very strong cultural identity in the south of Germany. And so Heimat will always be, the mountains, the city, the culture, that's Heimat. And you take that with you wherever you go, I believe.
And to me, for me, part of that definition of the word Heimat, and Brett, I think you can relate to that too, because as most of you watching this know that Brett's got a strong connection to Poland, even though he's an Aussie. But Heimat, as not only as a word, but as an intellectual concept, is something that is maybe stronger throughout Europe, and maybe different European languages have different words for it, but it implies not only the place where we are culturally from, it may also mean that this is where we feel like we belong and we don't have to explain ourselves to anyone, right? Is it possible to find that place abroad?
Does that goes to me or to Brett?
To all of us.
Brett, you want to chime in first, please?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think it is possible to find it and really feel connected. I mean, I've been to other parts of the world. I think that people will ask me if there is another place that feels like home. The closest I've ever come is probably when I got off the plane in Dublin, Ireland, strangely enough. And so, but it's just really it's an attitude of the people. It's something that is really, you can't put your finger on. So you can't do that unless you feel that internally. It's not an external thing. You can't point to a piece of architecture. You can't point to a piece of art, a streetscape, or anything like that. So for me, I don't think there is a way of recreating that. But I love that term. And I don't, I certainly don't have that term in English. I just call it home. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is, but it's such a wonderful way to reference it. Yeah.
I think you can, that's what we're basically doing. And I think that's what all these, clubs and German restaurants, and you can create little pieces of that. And I think it's also one of the reasons why most expats that I know, even if you go and you're like, I want to go to a different culture, I don't want to hang out with any other Germans because I want to experience, I want to make friends from other culture and I want to experience truly the country that I'm in. But I think almost everyone reverts back to at least having some friends from your cultural circle. Just there's so much understanding that's similar. And I think when kids come into play, and I've seen it so many times in my circle of friends and also with our community members and clients we work with, when kids come into play, you're much more like, I want to pass on what I know as well, or what I've been experiencing. And I think that's when you look back to what, our cultural events, like we do, again, the little lantern walk, it's a very German thing around November 11th. We had 600 people in Prospect Park in New York. I mean, it's really been like everyone with kids. We have a horse and everything come out. So it's very different from what I'm doing professionally on, the expert side. But that's
St. Martin on the horse?
Yes, and he's cutting his he has like a full armor and he's cutting the coat, and it's a German. It's a biblical story, but yes.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because we did this, my wife and I. Well, my wife started a Montessori school in a small town in Southeast Tennessee some 15 years ago, and because that's a children's tradition to do the lantern walk on St. Martin's Day, and it goes out even outside of the Catholic realm, right? Even Protestants have this tradition, and we did this in our small town in Tennessee with the kids every year, and it became a tradition for the entire school community, whether they were of German cultural origin or not, because all the other kids were drawn to the fact, I get to hold something that shines and I get to make it myself, and there's my family around this. So you can actually, by importing a little fragment of Heimat into a foreign culture, we managed to spark a little bit of something that went outside of the Germanic circles. I'm not sure if all the people that showed up in New York for this were all German expats, or if you had people from
at the beginning, yes. I took this over from someone else. At the beginning, it was just a small group of German families, but by the time we took it over, we grew it through a website. I mean, people take their friends and their neighbors, and so yeah, it's become much more international.
Nice.
I have one question about this just quickly, and well, maybe it might be quick in the explanation of it, but I've noticed in connection with some of the more immigrant communities here that carry on traditions like these. These are wonderful traditions they want their children to be exposed to from the home culture that maybe their children weren't born into. Even like my daughter, she was born in America, but she has a very strong connection to Poland. So there's a lot of traditions that are carried on or practiced by the immigrant community here. Do you ever find that? Do you ever kind of find the need to maybe sometimes check whether those traditions are still practiced in the home country? I mean, not even specifically to German. You know, so sometimes I've had the experience where people say, you know, we've had visitors from our home country come here and they see us practicing these traditions. And they go, you know, we don't do a lot of that anymore in our home country. Is there any? I mean, does that happen organically, or do you kind of like to keep in touch with a good, solid community back in Germany too, to make sure that you're updating these traditions to make them contemporary?
I think for us it's different because we work a lot with expats. So it kind of like our client database refreshes every 3 to 5 years because they go back and the next one's coming, or the ones that are here, you know, have babies. So that stays pretty fresh. But we also have been, for a while I had a magazine as well, and that was strongly connected to the German American community that are here third, fourth, whatever, more generations, and they have some very different cultures and traditions. I mean, I went to one of their events once, and pretty much the music stopped in the late 50s. Like they had like German Schlager music, and then had like that, and then the Fliegerlied. That was the only thing that's like very modern kind of Oktoberfest song. So all the songs were like stuck with, you know, my parents' grandparents' music, because they just didn't. I think people that came after not so much looked for the German American connections. They were more modern. They're like, you know, I'm here for a couple of years. I'm going back. So we are really more we're here for the expats and people that are like Christian and I, who, you know, like first generation, but still very connected with the home country. And then the German American, and have tons of clubs around, especially in the Midwest. They have like dances and traditions that were like, whoa, no.
I just went to one on Sunday.
Food. I'm like, we wouldn't eat that anymore. It's so outdated.
Christian knows I just went to a birthday party on the weekend for one of our neighbors who was a Yugoslavian, originally from Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia, and but they in the war, because it was 100th birthday party, so you can imagine his age in the war. But the event was held in a Swabian club, right here in Chicago, and everybody there was originally not German, but they actually honor the German culture because that's where they settled right after the war, and they have a lot of connection and appreciation and gratefulness, obviously, for the German people for the fact that they were accepted as refugees and brought in. So it was an interesting day because I thought, well, actually, these people aren't really German. They're from a completely different culture, but they honor these cultural things. But you're right to that point. It seemed very like an ancient practice of German culture, not more of a modern one. But that's
And it probably develops in their own way. You know, I mean, it's probably also developed since, but it's like a parallel culture maybe in a way. I mean,
absolutely.
German events here, they're great and they do a lot of fun and they're very proud of their German heritage and they're very connected. But some things are just celebrated or just handled differently than we modern Germans.
And you can draw the parallel to the Polish community in Chicago or elsewhere in the United States, where those who came 100 years or 80 years ago who are holding on to their old traditions differently than present day Poles would when they come over. You see that with the Latin community, especially in southern states, where there's the older generations, the earlier Latin immigrants, whether from Mexico or other parts of Spanish-speaking South America, who are more conservative in their traditions. And you look at young Latin culture in LA, in places like Austin or Houston, that has nothing to do with that old traditional cliche mariachi Latin culture. It's quite different, right? And I think there's been some generational shifts, and as we as a society, or as Western societies, let's put it that way, as we have become more mobile, both in terms of transport and in terms of technology, I think present day expats are approaching their international or their time abroad in a much different way than their parent or grandparent generation.
Mm-hmm. But that's also what I love about the US. It's so always developing, and you know, if you want to, you get to meet anyone and everyone. You can dive into some different cultures, especially in a place like New York. I mean, it's like you go a few blocks, or you take a subway stop, and you're in a completely different. Chicago's probably similar.
Well, I want to give a shout out.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to something in Manhattan. You know this better than I, Gabi, if he's still around despite the pandemic. But for Bavarians, the safe haven in New York was always a place called, Gabi, where do Bavarians go in Alphabet
From
City?
Schneider, but it's not
Didn't
around.
make it through the pandemic?
No, he was actually really, really lucky, and unlucky that his lease ran out February 29th in 2020. So we had 5 days of amazing party, and it was also Carnival. So it was 5 days of crazy party. Those 5 days, and 2 weeks later it was the shutdown. So he got really lucky in a way. They were supposed to, looking for different spot to open again in the summer of 2020, which obviously is still delayed, but he was super lucky that happened at that point.
Okay, so he was not negatively impacted, but the establishment itself is not around right now.
Unfortunately, in 20 years of Zum Schneider, it was an institution in New York.
I want to give a shout out to some of our viewers here again. Kerstin, who says she's lived in Atlanta for 16 years and had both German and international friends. And I agree, Kerstin, living in Atlanta, that is also my reality. There are a few Germans, especially if you live here for longer, not as a traditional expat like myself. Other nationalities, non-US people that share the living abroad reality. We may have differences amongst our group, but we all have in common the concept of being foreigners or immigrants or expat, or whatever term you want to put on there. And Kerstin now lives in Indianapolis and finds out there's a lot of German clubs, restaurants, and bakery. Well, good for you. The bakery might be the most important thing, I suspect. And here we have Heather van der Lande. Heather van der Lande coming. So let me be complete here. She's a realtor and often works with expats. So glad you're watching, Heather, and glad you're loving it in capital letters. Awesome. Stay tuned here. Oh, and of course, she's also in Atlanta. See, guys, I know Chicago, New York.
Just attract them.
Atlanta is where it's happening, people.
It is a diverse country, and that's what's so amazing about living here. So, if we find the communalities more than the differences, can only get better.
So, Gabi, I just in one aspect about expat, because we work with expats and we're often warning about the expat bubble. So I'm just kind of referring to what Heather is talking about here, and I think it's it's good to keep in the back of your mind that it's so great to have a community that comes and speaks your language, understands your mindset, understands your culture. But there is often the danger of just kind of being so comfortable in that you never get to engage with the outside world. So is part of your mission also to kind of encourage people that come here to the country as expats to also balance the connection with the culture, the home culture in this foreign place with the expansive experience of diving into the local culture and enjoying that as well?
I think when you come to the US, it's easier to immerse and to mingle when I haven't done that, but if you, let's say, you move to like Asia or somewhere where it's really harder, you don't speak the language. So I think if you open, it's very easy to get to know your neighbors, your friends through school, through kindergarten, through hobbies, through work. So I do think most people here, and you don't necessarily live in like expat housing, which you do in some countries where also in the Middle East or something, you're sometimes in that expat housing with like the gate and the security. And then I think it's really hard to get out. I think if you move to the US, people do want to mingle, most of them, and they want to explore. I think one of the things that's often underestimated, and that's where we come in with what we do a lot, is that people think, yes, I know the US. I've been here on vacation. I've seen many movies. I've seen all the TV shows. I know how it works. And that is a lot of people where they fall into a little bit of a trap or like the culture shock or anything, because they don't expect to have culture shock. Because once you get here, I mean, one of my examples is always like just going to a restaurant. I mean, I could tell you 5 things that are just different. It's not something don't need an online course or some training for that to know that you have to wait to be seated and, you get your water for free. And when you get to check, please leave. I mean, those are things you get after the first or second time you realize how it works. But then there's so many, especially in the social aspect, subtle things at work, leadership, how you communicate with your team, things like you meet someone at a party and you have a great time. Yes, like, maybe another mom's like, yeah, let's have coffee. That sounds great. It was so great to meet you. And you're like, wait, I made a friend. And you call them, you email, and you never hear back from them. You're like, what happened? And it's one of the things where Americans are being nice. And my tip is always, if there's a time, if there's like, let's have coffee, how about next week? Then it's pretty sure that's going to happen. If it's just, we should go for drinks sometime, it doesn't mean necessarily that's the intention is probably there, but it doesn't mean that it happens. And this is just like very subtle stories of things that are very different. And when you school system, completely different ball game. I mean, there's so many things that you don't know that you don't know. I think that's probably the biggest message. You don't know that you don't know.
I don't know how you feel about this, Gabi, because I think, and I've seen some of the speakers in your conference are addressing this, but this is something that I noticed has become, in the past 10 years, has become a much bigger obstacle for younger expatriates when they come here, that we, especially in the Western context, we experience families with 2 working parents, with parents who both have a career, and the career of one of them is sending the family abroad, and the spouse that is tagging along, so to say, is either scrambling to keeping their professional journey alive abroad, or they're forced to push the pause button on that career. How have you been experiencing that? I know there's quite a few great speakers and expats you have on that topic in your virtual conference. What's your experience?
Yeah, I think that's a big topic. That's also a topic that luckily now companies are starting to address more and more when they send people abroad, especially the larger companies that have programs to support the spouse as well. I mean, it all depends what, if you're a teacher or like a lawyer or like, working, as a police officer or something like that. There's so many professions that you would have to get recertified or go back to school for that. So that's hard to do. But there's also many ways that you can use the time. You can either go back to school, do an online class, maybe volunteer your skills, or even start your own business. It's a very popular thing also amongst expat partners to use their time to see what skills do I have, how can I use them, and can I maybe start my own thing, or can I offer my services? Like I'm a graphic designer, maybe I've always been working for a company, and maybe now I freelance. And that's also a big topic, as you mentioned. I think we have 7 or 8 speakers around that topic: how to find your new identity, how to know what you want to do, how to start, and then also the practical tips of how to interview, how to send your resumes. It looks different here. How to work with a headhunter, and there's also some great coaches out there that can help you through those processes, because as you said, I think probably the traditional expats in the 60s, 70s, 80s, lots of times when in their cases, mostly the husband was in a position to be on assignment. In Germany, at least in that time, most women were homemakers. I mean, that's just the reality. It was how it was. And nowadays, most of, especially the professional couples, the two career couples, a lot of them, and it is a big decision. And that's also where some assignments fail, where people say, okay, maybe 3 years, but not longer, when, you know, it's might have stayed longer otherwise, or they even cut the assignment short because one of the partners isn't happy. And luckily we see more and more women also that get on assignment, and there's more and more partners, husbands, or, you know, partners willing to be the expat, the trailing spouse. So we also have some dads or some coming through our groups here and be like, yeah, my wife is the one who's you know, working for Deutsche Bank or something like that, and I started my own business or did something else.
We've been tiptoeing around it and looking at the different details of the upcoming conference, and here it is in full view. So it is a virtual conference. It is from November the 3rd through the 6th. So there's 4 days packed with expertise. 40 and more experts, interviews, presentations, and maybe let's remove that banner so we can actually see what's on it. And workshops. There we go.
Yes. We're actually over 50 now. We added a few more topics that we felt had to be there. So we're actually over 50 now. But no worries. You do not have to spend 4 days glued to the computer. If you sign up for the full experience, you will get a month afterwards to review all the great content. And if you go for the VIP ticket, you even get 6 months. So it's no, you know, you don't have to be like 4 days glued to that. If you just have 1 day, we grouped it in 4 different topics, areas, pretty much. So if you say, I've been here for a while, but, you know, school and education, family is a big topic, you can just choose day 4. If you say working, personal development, you know, starting my own business, what do I do as a partner? That would be day 3. So you can just pick 1 day. And if you just join us for 1 day, it's free. So you can just sign up, pick your main topic. If you then later decide, hey, this is so amazing, I really want to know, you know, everything and dive into different topics, you can always upgrade at any time and get the full experience.
So folks, you see down here, the conference dates and the website Ich Bin Expat. You don't need to know how to pronounce it. You only need to know how to type it. But a lot of the...
Kind of, because one caveat is that about 70% is German. The presenters are in German. So it is geared towards the German-speaking community, mostly. But also we have a track for global mobility and HR professionals. So, and those are in English. So if you, if you global mobility HR, you know, let us know. We can hook you up as well.
Well, we can hook you up here. This will be one way to get your tickets right now. So you just type in that link and get your tickets for a 4-day pass or VIP, or I don't know what the options are. There's plenty of options, and there's the right option for you. But Gabi, you said you have a treat for our viewers. So what's the best way for them to get that treat?
Yeah, we would like to give away 3 tickets, 3 of our 4-day passes. So
nice.
I think there's the code 2 Chaps. Maybe you want to post it. So
yes, we'll bring that in here. So if you go on ichbinexpat.com and you use that code when you sign up, what do you get?
It's the first 3 tickets. If you have to go on the 4-day experience, the 4-day pass.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 3 will get a free ticket for it's worth $147. So, and you have a month of access to everything. And if you join us live, obviously there is several live workshops. Christian is doing one as well, where you have question and answer opportunities. There will be some networking. There will also be some fun. We have a cute comedian on there and an author and a few. Just to get like a little bit of a humorous take on what it means to be an expat as well. So it's not all serious.
Yeah, just to make sure that the message lands with everybody out there. yes, I will present, and there is a comedian. Those are two different events. Okay, I am not the funny person. Okay, just
you have your
Is it-
moments, Christian. You have your moments.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, is it that's interesting because my good friend here always says he takes his humor very seriously. Is the atmosphere at a German comedy club different from the rest of the world?
It's always a thing that we're not funny. We're freaking funny. It's like the language lends itself to being. It's such a creative language. Just that the word plays and things like that. And just give us a few beers if you've ever been to Oktoberfest. It's the fun of your life. We just need a little longer. We just need a little longer to warm up. But we are
I
funny.
fully agree. And you know, Brett, the German word for expat is Auslandsentsendete. There you go. If that ain't funny, then I don't know.
Of course it is.
Bless you.
What's German for two chaps?
Well, depends on the dialect. In our Bavarian dialect we probably could say "zwei Deppen." That's all. I'm not gonna translate that.
I like that.
So, folks, go to ichbinexpat.com and use the code to Chaps if it's still available. I don't know. The first three might already be taken. So it's first come, first serve. This gives you free access to all 4 days, right? And
yes.
Repeat that again, Gabi. What did they get with the code?
And what three tickets? So you have to click on the 4-day pass.
Okay.
Yeah. And 1 month of access to everything. You get a ebook and a few, goodies and discounts and all those good stuff. And make sure you're on day 2, right?
I should know this, but I have a banner here somewhere. I'm sure it says somewhere here. Here's the flyer that you guys created. So I'm on November 5th. I guess that's day 3.
That's day 3, right? That's day 3.
And for all of you, it's completely understandable. The topic is endlich verständlich, wie transatlantische Teams erfolgreich werden. If you don't know what that means, my session is not for you anyway. All right. No, I'm going to talk about.
If you want to just want to join that one day, you can also sign up for free, but use Christian's link and you're in for that day, and you can always upgrade later if you want to.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I could do this every week.
Let's do it. I do want to mention though that you have live events happening to the virtual conference, right? There is something happening remind me?
Oh no, there's every day we have 6 to 8 live sessions where
that are not virtual.
The in-person. We have 2 in-person events, one in New York City and one in Philadelphia. Originally, our grand master plan was to have a live event during the conference, an in-person networking event in every major city where at least there's a chamber of commerce, but or some partners that would host it. But little thing called Corona again, spoiled the plans a little bit. So maybe next year. But in hindsight, I'm happy because this is became much more work intense than we anticipated, and a little bit bigger than we anticipated. So I think we're good with only having 2 live events, and maybe next year we will have more. But if you're interested, if you're in New York or Philadelphia, let us know. We are happy to have you mingle in person if you're ready.
So you heard it, expats. You're gonna be an expat. You already are one. You've got stuck abroad somewhere. Whatever is your definition of being home, away from home, and making a life and career abroad, this is an event for you. Ich Bin Expat Virtual Conference, November 3 through 6. Tax, immigration, legal stuff, work stuff, parenting, schooling, healthcare, spouse career coaching, virtual teams, transatlantic teams, cultural aspects. Did I miss anything, Gabi? The whole bouquet of expert expertise.
You're good. I should have recorded that and used that for my next.
We did.
You did. By the way, it will be recorded, and we'll give you a special code to have it.
There we go. Excellent. Gabi, thanks for joining us, and I'll see all of you at the conference, because you gotta. I mean, there's no way around it. All right.
Yeah.
course. Thank you so much
Final
for having
thoughts
me.
on final thoughts, Brett, on expat life?
Well, I just want to thank Gabi. There's a lot of people that that pop up in different expat communities, and they put a lot of work and effort into supporting their fellow compatriots around the world. And Gabi, you're doing a great job, and you're an inspiration for anybody who wants to step up and support it. It comes with a lot of work, no doubt. You know that yourself. So I think that we should appreciate and be very grateful for the people like Gabi that provide these services for different communities around the world to make people feel, give them the resources, to settle in and make their assignment a success. So thank you for the work you do. It's well needed. Yeah. Just
a very quick shout out. Obviously, I'm not doing this alone. I have a great team behind me. I have the speakers who are graciously, giving the expertise and time for this. We have amazing sponsors that help us make this possible. Miles & More, Lufthansa, and Riddle & Partner, two of the top ones, and the Chambers of Commerce around the country, the German-American Chambers of Commerce, have also been very helpful in promoting this and supporting this. So it's been quite a roller coaster. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah.
First time we're doing something that big, but yeah. So I hope many of you will find something interesting and join us.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Gabi. Thanks for joining us. Stay warm in Chicago. Stay warm in New York. And Two Chaps episode. What was this, Brett?
207 or something like that.
Awesome. Let's keep it up.
Going.
Thanks.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.